Okay, so today we're going to talk about full-time trading. This is something that one of the people that I met at Traders for Cause brought up. I remember it's something that I wanted to touch on many, many times, and it's something I feel like doesn't really get discussed too often. So I want to shed some light on that from my experience. I think like you guys will find it pretty relatable, and in that way, I hope that you know benefit a lot. This does tie in somewhat to what I was saying at my last Traders for Cause conference speech, which was last weekend, but I will just kind of clue you into that real quickly. So, essentially, the question of full time trading for me hinges upon the quote that I really love, and it's 99% is a bitch and 100% is a breeze. In other words, if you put in 99% of everything that you have as a person into something, just because you have that one extra percent out the door, like let's say you're working on the side or part time, you're studying, that 1% is going to make your life like a living hell. And when you finally are able to fully focus on something, that is really the sweet spot that you want to aim for. So I want you to kind of reflect on your situation if you're thinking about these questions and say, like, yes, you're killing yourself to go for it, but it does actually get a lot easier when you can put everything you have into it. So just keep that in mind, okay, throughout this conversation. All right, so last Traders for Cause, not the one this weekend, but 2021, there was a guy he brought his girlfriend with him to the cocktail party, and she pulled me aside and she said, "Hey, I want you to talk to my boyfriend. Like I want to support him. I want to make sure that he can do this. I've been telling him to quit his job." And this is someone that I had corresponded with here and there on Twitter. I've seen him through different stages, months apart, DMs, things like that, updates, and I kind of knew that his head was in the right place. And so you're gonna find yourself in a lot of different situations. I just have to say this. So he's a young guy, right? And he has the support of his family, of his relationship, and he's been studying this enough and trading to the point where it's not like he's just starting in the game. He is following along with the timeline that I usually touch on. So I think if you're a longtime follower, you understand that I always mention that there's these stages, right? And this was what I talked about this year, Trace for a Cause. I know there's a lot of different timeline riffs here, but just follow with me. And essentially, he was past the point of like, okay, this is my first year. I'm just learning things. He was actually, understanding strategy. He was being consistent, but he also, wasn't 100% in on it. Like he still was worried about, do I do this? Do I not do this? And this is just one situation. We'll run through a couple different scenarios, but essentially, I encourage him to quit. And I think, a lot of people will say, okay, well, not quit trading, but quit whatever he's doing, his jobs, and just go for trading. Because, like at this point in time, if you're that person, okay, you're young, you have something to fall back on, this is a great time to take a risk. Because, you can always go back to studying. You can, having the support financially or just, mentally, that's a very big deal. And ultimately, that's kind of the basis of when one should attempt to go full time. But, I have to say so many caveats because this is not like, it's not one size fits all, and it's also can be irresponsible as well. So I just want to make sure I'm hitting all those bases, okay? But in this one situation, you're a young person, you have support, you've put in the work, you're studying. I would say do it, okay? The biggest risk that you can take is not taking a risk on yourself when you're young, in my opinion. And it's so rare to have a passion at that age. and that I believe, you should follow this because the rewards are immense. It's a risk reward problem. Asymmetric risk towards the reward side, very little risk. You know, like give it everything you have. That's the way that I've lived my life. And I understand that it's coming from a position of privilege, but I'll show you down the road that this wasn't always the case for myself. And so I had the privilege of becoming a professional gamer, dropping out of university, and having a great career out of this, and then transitioning again in a similar endeavor to trading. I understand risk taking, and as you can see, I can attest that it's very, very worth it. And it's hard for me to kind of see people who didn't take risks, having a hard time. But then again, I recognize what I have, but I'm there to take it full advantage of it. You have to play the cards you're dealt. Okay. And so that's one scenario. Second scenario is, and I don't want to spoil my presentation this year. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend watching it. But essentially, I mentored a trader who had dropped out of, he finished graduating undergraduate, but he was going to continue graduate school. Okay, and much to the dismay of his family, his girlfriend, his friends, he kind of set that aside because he found he had a passion with trading, and he was pursuing that. And I helped him kind of go through that situation, but it wasn't easy for him. He had taken a loan from his parents basically to get him over PDT, similar to Tim Grittani, and he had a timeline in which he had to pay it back. And he was working his way towards it, so he was working all the time, just trying to get that little bit of paycheck to build up his account, pay his minor expenses, and trade at the same time. And he had very much difficulty, despite the fact that I was helping him and encouraging him along the way, and making sure he's doing the right things, etc. And I just have to say, like everyone, even if you go through the situation where you have the luxury of having someone helping you, encouraging you, stimulating your mind along the way, it's still going to be extremely difficult. And so up until the point where he basically was able to kind of hit that precipice of being able to quit his job and commit to trading, that was the point where he was able to turn it around, in the sense that like he was kind of flatlining or not seeing much results, and the pressure was very insurmountable for the fact that he knew that the moment he loses that funding and drops low PDT, the game just becomes infinitely harder. So that pressure loomed on him, and he was able to transition beautifully out of that, to the point where it's kind of laughable, the situation that he was in, and the fears and anxieties he had. So that's another example. Okay. I'm going to tell you my own example. So of course I came into trading with a bit of my own capital from gaming, and that was enough to make sure that I wasn't dealing with PDT and whatnot. And we all know the story that I always tell, that I grew my account and I lost all of it in a couple of blow-ups back in 2018. And resetting this account, I was in a position where I wasn't sure if I could continue to trade full time as I had. And I was considering, I even went so far as to have like a DoorDash delivery bag, coming in, because I applied. Maybe I need to do that. Maybe I need to do some Uber, whatever. You know what I mean? Whatever it takes to build that account. But luckily, I was able to not have to do that, because I treated what I had very preciously, and I was able to subtract that 25,000 from PDT from whatever stake I had. So that was 30,000. So I was trading with a $5,000 account, and basically trying to maximize that and stretch out as much as possible. I mean, the alternative is death, right? It will take you forever to work this back up, minimum wage and whatnot. So by doing this, I'm building myself up. But okay, now I'm reaching kind of that point where my relationship is maturing. Okay. And so with my fiance, she's not there to wait for me forever. She made that very clear. I need to see some progress. And so, we move out together a couple times, but essentially, like, I was relying on her financially to pay the rent in large part. I mean, I tried to contribute somewhat monthly, and that gave me motivation. That put money into perspective in terms of, food, rent, etc. Okay, all your expenses. So, I want you to, if you're in a situation, I want you to really scrutinize deeply your monthly expenses, extrapolate that over many months to a year, and really drill down into like what essentially do you actually need to, make this full time, or how can you, if you're lucky enough to have support of a loved one, how can you in part contribute towards that, and what goals can you set for yourself financially? And these are small goals. You'll find like in trading, there's an abundance of capital that can be made, that can be lost, but as a professional, we're looking to make money, of course. And so you can say, okay, now I need to make like $500 a month or $1,000 a month. Okay. It's not perfect, but I'm not going to freeload. Okay. You have your own personal pride. And if you actually, put your kind of statistics through a filter, it actually puts things in perspective. So I'm going to give two examples. One example is, so I'm always trading 3-to-1, or at least that's what I aim for. I mean, it's very hard now to say that, but essentially, like, let's say you need to make $1,000, but you're 3-to-1, so you just divide that by 3. So it's about 333, etc. dollars, right? And so if you can get to a point now that you can risk $333 per trade, then all of a sudden that $1,000 becomes a lot more feasible and in one trade. So you can now start like breaking down these goals into your relationship with risk reward as a trader. And of course, we're going to take many trades as well. So I think that should help you kind of build out your like mental clarity on the situation. The other example would be, if you're just 1-to-1, whatever, it's going to be much harder. Of course, you risk 1,000 to make 1,000, but again, like over time, you're going to be able to kind of build that clarity. Another thing that I would recommend is that if you go into an Excel, just pop into Google Sheets and type in the amount of trading days in the year. I think it's 252. And thanks to Bao for this tweet, obviously. But essentially, you just type in 252 and then have that divided by like a salary that you feel like you would be comfortable with, or what maybe potentially you were working with in the past. So let's say 100K, you divide that by 252, etc. You get a certain number. I don't have that up in front of me, but I will tell you it's quite low how much you need to make per day. And if you, again, put that into 3-to-1 or 2-to-1 or 1-to-1 relationship to that money, you're going to realize that these goals are a lot more achievable than you think. And by doing this, you can actually just play around. Okay, what will it take me to make $200,000 a year, $300,000 a year? And so at that point in time, my goal was basically to just match my fiance. She worked at a nice tech job in California, so it was about like 100K or so I wanted to make. And then I just broke it down and I told myself like, okay, I can do that. Like literally that's so achievable if you really think about it. And then eventually my next goal became, okay, I want to double that so then she can quit her job. And then you put that in, etc. Oh, how about double? How about $1 million, etc. This is putting things into like these microscopic terms gives you a lot of perspective and vision. And then I want to translate that into how to, actually practically put this into application. Because it's not all about what you learn. It's about how you actually use it and also the models which you can follow. Okay. So continuing the story, basically, so my fiance was paying rent in large part, just a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, down in Irvine, costs about $1,700 a month. I think I paid $500 or so just for a couple months. And like, that sucks. Like, you have to really suck up your pride in this situation, but I feel like it gives you a lot of purpose, gives you a lot of clarity of your why, and helps you ultimately if you can, really receive the love and support of that person and trust and have them trust you that you're going to make this through. That's a great time to give yourself the opportunity. Like, if you, let's say you have a certain amount of money and you say, like, I can't pay everything, but let me at least help a proportion. I'm going to make this up to you. Like, that's something that you can attempt. That's what I did. But the most practical scenario, okay, is that you'll be able to start wiring out those funds. So now we've identified kind of the baseline of our expenses. We can go ahead and start capping out our account. So I understand that people want to constantly grow their account, and it's honestly not the best idea, because for every dollar you have in there, it's a dollar that you can lose, and you have to be able to accept that and be willing to understand that, like, as cool as it would be to have that $1 million account, if you have 300,000 in savings, then that million can be zero, like, in a blink of an eye. Okay, so you have to understand that, and in doing so, we have to work under this framework of using the freezes on the account. And that means that you identify levels that you're happy with, and that happiness level should be determined based on the expenses that you have to pay. And so now you understand, like, okay, maybe $10 is not significant enough for me to pay my expenses, so I'm going to work my way towards where I can start wiring out that $500 or that $1,000 that is significant to me. And so once you start kind of hitting that range of, like, okay, I'm making hundreds of bucks here on my trades, or making a couple $100, like, let's really think practically about this. And so once you're doing that, you can now set that freeze on the account, take a percentage of it as your 1R, and then identify exactly what the account value you need is to maintain that. And one thing that I should clarify, which I'll do in another video, is that you should have a little bit of surplus as your threshold over the value. So for example, if you have a $50,000 account and you're risking 1% per trade, then I would like to have a little bit of a buffer. This you can kind of determine on your own, but like for me, I'd be more comfortable having like 51 or 52,000 potentially. And that way, when I'm risking, if I take a couple losses, like, I can still maintain the risk level that I'm trying to work at and maintain. But if I do eventually fall underneath this threshold, then I will wire out. Then I will size down. That's what I meant to say. And until that I reach that threshold. And at that point, I can maintain the risk level that I want. And anything over that buffer, like that 51 or 52,000, then I'll just wire every single dollar out of that to the T. And this is the most important part about full-time trading, is that you need to now start building your bank account outside of trading, and make a pact with yourself, full of pain from the past, that you will not wire a single dollar back into your account that you take out as payment for your efforts. Okay, the only money that matters to you as a retail trader is the money that you put into your bank account. So now that you're able to identify this threshold of which you wire out, you should start building up that bank account. Okay, I'm not saying put that in investments. I'm saying straight up hold that in an account. Okay, this is your emergency fund. And you tell yourself, how much does this money represent to me in my life in order to continue trading full time? So how much does this buy me? Do I have a month now, half a month, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, 1 year, etc.? Build the shit out of that account. Okay, like really focus on that, and only size up at the point where you feel totally comfortable to lose everything that you have, because that's that's the uncertainty that trading provides that you need to counter with your own, methods of wiring. And by doing this, you'll realize that you're freeing up so much space for yourself to continue trading full time, to continue pushing. And you need to be very careful about lifestyle inflation as well. You want to make sure that you're not being greedy, and not the good times will not always last. And again, that bankroll serves its purpose of getting you through drawdowns. You can say to yourself, well, okay, I'm having a tough time, but if I learn from my mistakes, then I will be able to continue trading, testing, learning, refining. But I ultimately have bought myself time in the past. You go me, go me. Give yourself a pat on the back. And this is ultimately the skill that you need to develop of being disciplined with saving money that will enable you to continue being a full-time trader. And if you can continue down this path, again, 100% is a breeze. And this allows you to put in the reps, put in the experience, get everything you need to get going in order, to really turn this into your lifelong career. So essentially, I think that covers most of it. And I think that, people who have capital, I will say this, I've heard like horror stories actually over the weekend of people who were successful in business and like very successful, talking like owning and operating businesses, selling them off and having a handsome profit, come into the market, they have no understanding of their needs necessarily because it's already taken care of. So they just risk a lot and lose it all, and then it becomes an endless spiral. So I mean, this discussion is not necessarily for you, but I will say that if that's your position in life, that you be very, very, very careful. I've literally talked to someone who lost millions like first year of trading. Did that mean everything to him? No, but it hurts psychologically deep down. And if you're in that situation, you have to remember that like whatever you lost is just gone, like straight up, and you can't make it. You're not going to make it back anytime soon. So this goes for the people who are really hungry, who don't necessarily have the best circumstances, or are kind of on the fence about this and how to do it. That's my goal with this. So we have a lot of people listening live, and I asked them to put down some questions for me, and just in case I miss anything. So I'm going to go ahead and just scroll through a couple of them, and then we'll cap this off. Okay, Auntie A says, do you think it's more realistic to have a full-time job outside of trading while trading on the side until money from trading starts to amount more from your full-time job, then switch from part-time job and full-time trade? Furthermore, with trading being inconsistent and sometimes reliant upon market sales to have big years, is full-time trading only reliable once you have something like 5 million? So you probably gathered the answer. I would say it's best as soon as possible to convert, but only once you've gone past that like year of learning. If you really just have no idea what you're doing, or you're a complete newbie, not really. I'm saying like if you have something that you worked out to be somewhat consistent and it's just a matter of scale, then, and you have the ability to kind of bankroll that for a while, I think that's a really good time to try personally. And no, you don't have to rely on big years. I think, a lot of traders last couple of years could probably retire, or have bought themselves so much time that it's easier to withstand smaller years like this. But, I don't think that there's no opportunity. There's always opportunities coming around. So, if you're like coming into this year and you identify opportunities, then it still should be possible to make money and still follow the framework that I described earlier about just kind of breaking down your expenses. And that's really what kind of life lends itself towards anyways in the end, you know what I mean? So This is just like a thing that I've been thinking about. It's just the relationship to money, which is that, your life doesn't really necessarily improve after a certain point. As long as you are kind of happy with your lifestyle and you don't wish to, increase the expenses that you're taking, the more money you have, that doesn't necessarily improve your happiness or whatever. So, if you understand your expenses currently, and also maybe just the ones that you will have, then that's all you need to do. That's all you need to make. And when you break it down to that level that I mentioned, where you just kind of divide that by the days in the year, then it becomes a lot more achievable. And what we believe we can achieve, that gives us much more motivation internally and much more self-belief, which is very important in trading to withstand kind of the hard times. So I would think in those terms rather than like big numbers, big aspirations. Like famously, well, actually not famously, but I would like to think so, that people understand that I don't necessarily believe in goals. I believe in systems that get you there, and I just have things I want. So let's say you want like $1 million, right? It's fine to want $1 million, but everyone wants $1 million. Like, just because you want it doesn't mean that you will get it more than anyone else, right? It doesn't matter if that's your goal. What actually matters is the things you're doing to get to that goal, the things you do every day, the review process you have, the trading process, your systems. And you will find oftentimes, like, you set a want, but you build the systems for that, you will oftentimes crush it in the end and get a way better result. So I think if you can take a lot of the pressure off yourself, if you think more in terms of like the micro versus the macro to me is just vision and ambition, but the micro is the discipline, the work, and ultimately what produces the results. Okay, I'm going to read a couple more. I'm just making sure that they're about what we're talking about. Okay, Wolf KH says, hello, I started full-time 2020 and traded with small size, got consistent, and grew my account from 25K to 870,000. Congrats. In 2020, 2021. Reached that amount not by luck, because traded with 1 to 2K share size and cut my losses. This year decided to do it more professionally and more large size, changed my free commission broker to a non-commission free broker. Started doing it, but couldn't grow it, and even worse, after a couple losses, decreased my share size 7%. I don't know, got used to trade small. I don't know what is the problem. Sorry, I'm trying to piece it together because I understand the English is not perfect. Just knowing, just a big fear. Okay, it's hard to say. Small red on the year. Okay. Feels bad. I can't find what's wrong. What do you recommend? Okay, so, I think everyone should hear this, that in 2022, if you're break even or small red, you are successful. And that sounds really bad, but it's the truth. The vibe at Traders for Cause, a lot of traders who nailed it last couple of years are having, trouble. And the ones who say that they're not, they may have adapted in some way or whatever, or their strategies are better for this period of time. But, that's totally fine. And it kind of feeds back to the last question about like, okay, is it, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but basically what I want to say is you bought yourself time by being prepared for the opportunity. And so because of this, you want to just mitigate the risk and keep it small. And the fact that you have means you did a good job, because the markets will cycle and there are a lot of factors out of our control. For example, I never believed that the big picture of a market affected small caps, and for the most part, it did not. But now more than ever, I've really paid more attention to the Fed, FOMC, rates, whatever, the overall health of a market. And naturally, we're all really part of the same ecosystem. So it's actually was naive of me to not think of everything at the time where it didn't seem to matter. But, you have to recognize like we're kind of all in this collective experience, and there are ways to take advantage of it. You may not have known how to take advantage of it, whether that means learning a new strategy or even simply taking more time off, right? And I think that the next time that happens, you just have to be utilizing this experience to deal with it. And that's totally fine. That's part of being a trader. But the premise of this entire discussion is buying yourself time, giving yourself the ability to learn, experience, and that's what it's all about. And, if you don't have the luxury of doing it, you really do need to get very deep on your own numbers and figure that out, because it is possible, and I've laid it out there for you. So it's really just up for you to figure that out for yourself and what your needs are. Okay, Zima says, how do you factor taxes when you got to the point where you're taking profits out of your account and begin utilizing for expenses? So you have to treat this as a business. You should be logging all of your expenses, locates, or, if you have a business set up, you have a number of expenses to think about, including outside things like food or whatever. Put that in Excel, and then roughly, calculate your income, your state tax, your federal tax. And like, what I'll say is something that really caught me this year versus other years is that like I made like lots of money, and I started feeling that the wiring out was not really impacting me, because I felt that I could live for a very long time with no problem. And then like I just stopped stacking it, and I started saying, oh, maybe I'll just build my account. But I assure you, this is a lifelong practice, because once the tax bill hit, I was really, really surprised by what I was seeing. It's a large chunk of the money that you make. So, and I live in California. This is probably one of the worst places to be tax-wise. So, you have to get over that feeling. Some of the thoughts I had in the past was like wiring out into a separate account, like meant for taxes. So I think what I'll do is I'll divvy it up and say like, okay, here's my tax account. What I'm putting aside, this is not like, I'm not going to utilize this. I'm not going to think about it. And then like have my true savings on the side. That might be one way to deal with it. A little bit difficult to do, so I haven't figured that out completely, but that's just a thought. Otherwise, just experience taught me like, you don't need to have a big account. You don't need to have tons of money coming in, like unless that's your real ambition. But like for me, I've kind of learned like that's not what I want. Like I think a lot of guys will say like, okay, well, this person doesn't want to push their limits. They don't want to like become a lead or whatever. But the truth of the matter is like, I feel that I am more than qualified to speak on this. I was trading at a pretty elite level. And I don't think that I had to put on a ton of risk to do so, which is why I speak from the other side towards this debate. But, like as someone who's a bit more discreet, I just don't feel the need to pound my chest on that respect. So, you just have to trust it if you feel like I'm being genuine with you. But like ultimately, you can be an elite trader, keep your account at a great level. You don't have to risk a ton of money to make a lot of money in this market, or in the market rather. And being full-time as a trader is a great opportunity, because the average salary, across America, even in like very high paying jobs, not only does it take up a lot of time that you're unwilling to put. Not saying that full-time trading doesn't. I spend definitely maybe double as amount of time as other people, in their real jobs, because this is an entrepreneurial venture, but at least you get rewarded for it, right? And you love it and you understand why you're doing it. So I think these are the reasons why it's very worth it to pursue. And the fact that the money that's made in the market is exponential compared to the average lifestyle, I think that it comes a little bit quicker once someone can really like build that mental clarity, that patience with themselves, and recognize that they can kind of hack their life in terms of buying time with their profits. And you curb your ambition as a result, sure, but I believe in stability more than anything else in terms of trading. So I think that it's the way to go. So I think we'll end the discussion there, and I'll just upload this to YouTube for everybody. So hope you guys enjoy that. Thank you.